We're going to drive through the French Alps, then head west, crossing the Pyrenees into northern Spain, hugging the coast all the way to Santiago de Compostela. Then head south through Portugal, crossing back into Spain. From here we cross the Gibraltar Straits into Morocco, first the Rift Mountains, Middle Atlas Mountains, then the High Atlas Mountains, before heading to the coast road, heading north back to Europe, and finally touring southern Spain before returning through France. Along the way we're going to be doing what we love most, adventuring, including mountain biking, hiking, hopefully even learn to surf, as well as the usual sightseeing. Why not join us on our adventure?
We started the next stage of our journey by crossing the Basque Country from France into Spain, doing some mountain biking along the way. Before we headed into Spain, we stayed at a stunning campsite on a farm in France, which gave us some time to plan the next stage of our trip, most of which would now be on unfamiliar territory. In France, finding bike routes and van life was so easy, we were not sure it'd be so easy in Spain and Portugal. I had always wanted to travel across the northern coast of Spain and into the northwest region of Galicia, so I was really looking forward to finally living out a dream. To celebrate our arrival in Spain, we headed straight to the beach.
Hola, España!
Hola, buenas tardes.
6 minutes. Park up next to the first of many lighthouses was a good opportunity to ride a technical and dramatic coastal path, picking our way through the many hikers. This stage of our trip was never going to be about the mountain bike and was all about discovering the northern coastline of Spain. The bikes would still be used for getting around, and if we got lucky with a good trail, then it would be a bonus.
Afterwards, we briefly headed inland to explore a bit more of the Spanish Basque Country and enjoyed this stunning and isolated park-up before continuing to head west. No trip to northern Spain would be complete without visiting Los Picos de Europa. We'd both been to this national park before and had fallen in love with its striking green landscape and craggy summits. The national park was apparently named Los Picos de Europa by sailors returning from sea, for whom this was often the first sight of their homeland.
It was in the town of Picos that we heard the sad news of the Queen's death. The following day we headed up the valley to climb the Cammellino via Ferrata. We've not done much via Ferrata on this trip, and this one was certainly a step up from the previous, with its incredibly steep wall and high traverse cable. Thankfully there were good holds all the way up, although the wobbly cables on the traverse weren't exactly confidence inspiring. On our previous Picos trip some 15 years ago, we did an amazing hike from Fuente d'Aire, which just had to be repeated. On that hike we had full backpacks with camping gear and spent the night on the mountain, as it was quite some distance with substantial height gain. On this occasion we chose the risk of travelling light and doing it in a oneer. The only snag with this is that it starts from the top of a cable car some 750 metres above the valley, so if we missed the last one down it was going to be a long cold night on the mountain. This meant a sunrise start, making sure we were on the first lift up, setting a fast hiking pace. From the top of the grassy plateau there's an easy walk until things suddenly get steep and the terrain changes to a bizarre lunar-like landscape. Here we have to follow the cairns across the limestone surface until things get steep again, leading up to a col where we get the magnificent view of the Norana de Bunes. It will have to be another trip that we come back to climb this peak. This marked the halfway point. From here the drop is even steeper, over a combination of loose and technical surfaces down to the refuge. From the refuge it's another incredibly steep scramble up to another col until the never-ending descent back to the cable car. Thankfully we did make it with an hour to spare and even had time for a cheeky ice cream, feeling quite proud of our achievement. Moving on from Fuente de up the never-ending switchbacks, killing the fuel consumption on the van, we spend the night on the high col, which we love doing. This col overlooked the Picos we had just been hiking across. Here we pretty much had the place to ourselves, one of the advantages of travelling out of season. We were certainly getting into the al fresco lifestyle with stunning sunsets every night and a stargazer's delight.
The weather was closing in, so we descended out of Los Picos de Europa to a town called Cangas de Onís, spending a couple of nights next to many other motorhomes. Not all our park-ups are beautiful, but it was practical, enabling us to get some much-needed washing done and fill up with water. Before leaving, we made a last-minute decision to visit two famous glacial lakes called Lagas Covadonga. To get to the lakes, we climbed 1,500 metres on a steep, quiet road, only accessible by bike and the occasional tour bus. After visiting the lakes, it was downhill all the way, so we could sit back and enjoy the incredible views. Our journey continued west along La Costa Verde, or the Green Coast, finding places to stop along the way. It is generally forbidden to wild camp on the coast of Spain, but seems to be tolerated at lighthouses, so we parked next to another lighthouse on a beautiful headland and were lulled to sleep by the sound of the crashing waves. It was now time to re-accessorise for beach life. One of Matt's priorities for the trip was to learn to surf, so we stopped at a surf school for our first lesson. It was completely different to how we imagined a first lesson would be. After a very quick warm-up and demonstration of how to stand up on a board, we were off. There was no shallow water or gentle wave introduction. We were definitely thrown in the deep end. After being pummeled by waves for a couple of hours, we emerged exhausted but elated as Matt caught his first wave. We then moved along the coast, practicing at various beaches, but made sure we took time out to watch the Queen's funeral. One stretch of the coast of northwest Spain is known as La Costa da Morte, or the Death Coast, because of the many ships lost in storms over the centuries. This stretch of coastland is wild and remote, and we decided to explore it by bike, stopping at many of its isolated white sandy beaches for a dip. The weather was stunning when we were there, making it difficult to imagine what it would be like in a storm and how dangerous it was for ships. However, over 150 shipwrecks have been recorded on this section of the coast, the best known of which is the HMS Serpent, shipwrecked in 1890. Only 3 crew members survived. The other 172 members of the crew are buried in a memorial called the Cementerio dos Ingleses, or the English Cemetery.
We finished the tour of La Costa de Morte with 2 more beautiful headland park-ups and lighthouses, the last of which is called Cabo Fistera, which was regarded as the end of the known world in ancient times. and is a popular spot for many to come and watch the sunset. It is also an area visited by the late Stephen Hawkins. This was certainly the last place I expected to see a plaque for Stephen Hawkins, and reminded me of meeting him at an Eddie Izzard show of all places.
Whilst we were driving, we passed many people walking the various pilgrim routes known as El Camino de Santiago, all converging at Santiago de Compostela. No visit to Galicia would be complete without visiting this historic city and its striking cathedral. We headed back to the coast, exploring more beautiful beaches with pristine waters along the various peninsulas. Near a town called Cangas, we found a beautiful spot to park the van right on the water's edge and spent 2 nights here. From this spot we were able to use our bikes to explore the peninsula, initially riding on a fun coastal path, then stopping at more remote beaches to swim. One of which was my favourite of the trip so far, the wild and isolated beach called Barra, which was set against a backdrop of pine trees. Dragging ourselves away from the beach, we continued on the coastal path, passing more lighthouses, and rode up to one of the region's prehistoric hill forts, complete with a 17th century watchtower which had stunning views across the peninsula and out to sea. Eager to do some more mountain biking, we left the coast behind us, heading inland to try one of Galicia's dedicated mountain bike centres, which has waymarked trails for different levels. En route, we stumbled along some thermal spas dating back to Roman times, which were still in operation today. We were able to camp next to them and of course had a bathe in the piping hot waters. The mountain bike centre was located in a natural park bordering Spain and Portugal called La Serra de Torres. The bike rides we chose were designed to showcase this spectacular area. The route seemed to take us back in time, passing traditional granary stores, through ancient villages, some built on and around the landscapes, giant boulders, all with declining and ageing populations, and some now sadly abandoned. We even came across a giant picnic table, reminiscent of the Mad Hatter's Tea Party in Alice in Wonderland. The route also took us through the striking rocky landscape of the natural park and even included some fun technical single track. One thing we love about mountain biking is that it takes us to places in the world that we would not otherwise have thought to have visited, and we always see so much more on a bike than in a car or on foot.
also meet some great people along the way. The guy who ran the bike centre, Oscar, was a right character. He allowed us to park up for several nights at the centre and even brought us bread and grapes in the morning free of charge. And one evening he insisted on taking us on a 15-minute walk, which turned out to be an hour, to show us a beautiful log cabin overlooking the lake, even offering us to let us sleep there overnight. When he found out I was in the automotive trade, he just had to show us his pride and joy. A 1974 Mini Cooper and made me take it out for a drive, even pushing my right leg down to make it go faster. It was quite a memorable evening.
Our last day in Spain begins with a sunrise walk down to the lake amid the rising mist and network of ancient dry stone walls. We've seen so much of northern Spain, yet feel like we've only scratched the surface of it. We're sad to leave, but are super excited to be heading into Portugal, a first for both of us.